The Mafia boss saw the nurse's broken wrist. His voice went dead cold. "Who did that to you?" She knew. If she told the truth, her mother would die tonight. If she lied, he would know. Her answer in 3 seconds would decide everything. John Gotti's voice cut through the room like a blade. His dark eyes locked onto her wrist, and in that moment, Elise felt the temperature drop 10 degrees. She'd been treating this man for 3 weeks, a gunshot wound that had nearly killed him, and she'd seen him angry before. But this was different. "Who did that to you?" Elise's mouth went dry. She pulled her sleeve down fast, too fast, and the panic in her movement told him everything he needed to know. "Mr. Gotti, it's nothing. I just... Don't lie to me." He sat up straighter in the hospital bed, wincing through the pain of his healing wound. "I asked you a question." Outside the bulletproof windows, New York City glittered with 1,000 lights. Inside this room, a Mafia boss had just noticed something he wasn't supposed to see. And Elise Harper knew that secrets, in John Gotti's world, got people killed. If you believe no one should suffer in silence, hit that like button right now. Subscribe if you stand against abuse and cruelty, because only people who side with bullies and predators wouldn't want to see justice served. Drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. Now, let's go back to where this all started. 3 weeks earlier, Elise Harper had been a private nurse for 8 years, but she'd never worked for someone like John Gotti. The call came at midnight. A voice on the phone, calm, professional, terrifying, told her she had 15 minutes to pack a bag. A car was already waiting outside her apartment building. The pay was $50,000 for 1 month of work. The patient was confidential. The location was confidential. If she told anyone at all, there would be consequences. Elise needed that money like she needed oxygen. Her mother, Catherine, was dying, stage 4 cancer. The treatments weren't covered by insurance anymore. The hospital bills had climbed past $200,000, and the collections calls came every single day. Elise had already sold everything she owned. She'd worked double shifts until her body broke down. Nothing was enough. So when a man named Victor Crane offered her a loan, $40,000, just enough to buy her mother 3 more months of treatment, Elise took it. She didn't know Victor Crane ran the West Side Crew, one of the most violent street gangs in Brooklyn. She didn't know the interest rate was 15% per week. She didn't know that missing a payment meant more than just a phone call. The car that picked her up that night was a black Mercedes with tinted windows. 2 men in suits sat in the front. Neither one spoke. They drove for 40 minutes, leaving the city, heading north into the hills where the houses disappear behind iron gates and stone walls. The estate was massive, 10 acres of manicured lawns, gardens, and security cameras hidden in the trees. The house itself looked like something from a movie. White columns, marble steps, windows that glowed golden in the darkness. Inside, a man named Thomas Beckett met her at the door. He was older, maybe 60, with silver hair and eyes that measured everything. "You're the nurse," he said. Not a question. "Yes, Elise Harper." "Good. Follow me." He led her through hallways lined with paintings that probably cost more than her apartment. Guards stood at every corner silent, watching, armed. This wasn't a home. It was a fortress. They stopped at a door on the 3rd floor. Thomas knocked twice, then opened it. The man in the bed was pale, sweating, and barely conscious. A bullet wound in his abdomen had been stitched closed, but the infection was obvious. His fever was spiking. Without immediate intervention, he'd be dead by morning. "This is Mr. Gotti," Thomas said quietly. "Save his life. Don't ask questions. Don't leave this floor. If you need anything, press the button by the door." Then he left. Elise stood there, staring at the most dangerous man she'd ever seen. John Gotti. She'd heard the name before. Everyone had. He ran half the organized crime in the state. Drugs, gambling, protection rackets. Things Elise didn't even want to imagine. The newspapers called him the Reaper because people who crossed him just disappeared. And now she was supposed to keep him alive. For 3 weeks, Elise worked around the clock. She cleaned the wound, administered antibiotics, monitored his vitals every hour. She barely slept. The fever broke after 6 days, But the recovery was slow. John Gotti was in his late 30s strong, but even strong men could die from infections. He didn't talk much at first. He'd watch her sometimes, those dark eyes following her movements around the room. But he never asked her name, never said thank you, never showed any emotion at all. Elise told herself it didn't matter. $50,000. That was all she needed to think about. $50,000, and her mother could keep fighting. But then the calls started. Victor Crane's men found her phone number. They called every night at 2 a.m., right when she finally managed to fall asleep on the couch in Gotti's room. You owe us $12,000, Elise. That's this week's payment. I don't have it yet. I'm working. We don't care. You have 72 hours. They always hung up before she could respond. The payments were impossible. Even with the $50,000 coming, the interest climbed faster than she could breathe. She owed $60,000 now, then $70,000, then $80,000, and Victor Crane wasn't the kind of man who forgave debts. On the 19th day, two men showed up at her mother's hospital room. They didn't hurt Catherine. They didn't have to. They just stood there at the foot of the bed, staring, silent. The message was clear. Pay, or we'll make sure your mother's last days are even worse than they already are. Elise tried to hold it together. She tried to keep working, keep smiling, keep pretending everything was fine. But the pressure was crushing her. And then, on the 21st day, everything fell apart. She was walking back to her apartment to grab clean clothes. Thomas had finally given her a 2-hour break. The street was empty, dark, the kind of dark that made your instincts scream run. Victor Crane's men were waiting. There were 3 of them, big, scarred, the kind of men who hurt people for a living. You missed your payment, Elise. She backed up, but there was nowhere to go. Please, I just need a few more days. I'm getting paid soon. You've been saying that for 3 weeks. The leader, a man with a shaved head and tattoos crawling up his neck, grabbed her left wrist. His grip was iron. We're done waiting. He twisted. Elise felt the bone snap before she heard it. The pain was white-hot, blinding, and she screamed. But one of the other men clamped a hand over her mouth. You tell anyone about this, the leader whispered, and your mother dies tonight. You understand? She nodded, tears streaming down her face. They let her go. She collapsed on the sidewalk, cradling her wrist, gasping for air. By the time she made it back to Gotti's estate, the wrist was swollen twice its normal size. She wrapped it in an ace bandage from her medical bag, swallowed 4 painkillers, and prayed he wouldn't notice. For 2 days, it worked. She kept her sleeve down. She used her right hand for everything. She worked through the pain that made her vision blur. But tonight, adjusting that morphine drip, her sleeve slipped, and John Gotti saw everything. Who did that to you? His voice was ice. Elise's heart hammered in her chest. If she told him the truth, Victor Crane's men would kill her mother. If she lied, John Gotti would know, and she had no idea what he'd do to her. It was an accident, she whispered. You're lying. Mr. Gotti, please. He pressed the call button by his bed. 30 seconds later, Thomas Beckett appeared in the doorway. Give me Rodriguez's doctor, Gotti said, the orthopedic surgeon. I want him here in 1 hour. Sir, 1 hour, Thomas. Thomas nodded and disappeared. Gotti turned back to Elise. His expression hadn't changed, but something in his eyes was different now. Colder, more dangerous. Sit down. I need to finish. Sit down. She sat. Gotti studied her for a long moment. Then he spoke, and his words shattered the last piece of control she had left. I'm going to ask you one more time. And if you lie to me again, I'm going to find out the truth myself. And whoever did this to you, they're going to wish they were never born. Elise broke. The words came pouring out. The loan, the hospital bills, her mother, Victor Crane, the threats, the attack. She told him everything. And when she finished, she sat there shaking, waiting for him to throw her out, to call his guards, to make her disappear. Instead, John Gotti leaned back against his pillows and smiled. It was the most terrifying smile Elise had ever seen. "Victor Crane," he said softly. "I know him." The orthopedic surgeon arrived 53 minutes later, carrying a medical bag that probably cost more than Elise's car. His name was Dr. Alan Foster, and he didn't ask a single question. He examined Elise's wrist under a portable x-ray machine that Thomas wheeled into the room, then shook his head. Spiral fracture, deliberately inflicted. Whoever did this knew exactly how to cause maximum damage without leaving external evidence. He looked at Gotti. "She needs surgery. Tonight. Do it here." "Sir, I don't have an operating room." "You have hands. You have equipment. Figured out." Dr. Foster swallowed hard. "Yes, sir." 2 hours later, Elise woke up on a different bed in a different room. Her wrist was wrapped in a cast, elevated on pillows. The pain was still there, but it was manageable now. Distant, like something happening to someone else. Thomas sat in a chair by the door, reading a newspaper. "Mr. Gotti wants to see you when you're ready," he said, without looking up. "I can go now. You just had surgery." "I'm fine." She wasn't fine, but she needed to know what John Gotti was planning, because men like him didn't just let things go. And if he went after Victor Crane, the West Side crew would come after her mother. Thomas led her back to Gotti's room. He was sitting up now, looking stronger than he had in days. The color had returned to his face. His eyes were sharp, focused, alive with something Elise recognized as dangerous. "How's the wrist?" he asked. "It'll heal." "Thank you. Don't thank me yet." He gestured to the chair beside his bed. "Sit. We need to talk." Elise sat. Gotti leaned forward, and when he spoke, his voice was calm, but there was steel underneath every word. "Victor Crane runs the West Side crew. Small-time operation. They deal in debt collections, loan sharking, and intimidation. They're cockroaches. They survive because bigger organizations don't care enough to squash them." He paused. "I care now. Mr. Gotti, please. If you go after them, they'll kill my mother. They have people watching her hospital room. They won't do anything. You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." His eyes locked onto hers. "Victor Crane operates because people are afraid of him. He threatens families. He breaks bones. He makes people feel powerless. That's his whole business model. Fear." "Yes, exactly. So I'm going to take that fear away." Elise stared at him. "What?" "Your mother is being moved. Tonight, to a private facility under my protection. Victor Crane's men won't get within a mile of her. You're staying here until this is resolved. And in 3 days, the West Side crew is going to cease to exist." The words hung in the air like smoke. Elise's mind raced. Why? Why would you do this? For the first time, something flickered across John Gotti's face. Not quite emotion, but close. "Because you saved my life," he said quietly. "And because I don't tolerate people who hurt the innocent to collect debts." He leaned back. "Also, Victor Crane has been moving into territory that belongs to me. This gives me an excuse to clean up a problem I should have handled months ago. So this is business. Everything is business, Elise, but that doesn't mean it's not personal." That night, Elise watched through the window as an ambulance pulled up to the estate. Thomas supervised his 4 men, professional, efficient, gentle, transferred her mother from the city hospital to a medical suite in the west wing of Gotti's mansion. Catherine was unconscious, barely aware of what was happening, but she was safe. For the first time in months, Elise felt something that resembled hope. Thomas found her in the hallway afterwards. "Your mother will have round-the-clock care," he said. "Best oncologist in the state. Whatever she needs. I can't pay for this. You already did. You kept Mr. Gotti alive. That's worth more than money. I don't understand how any of this works." Thomas almost smiled. "You're not supposed to. Just trust that when Mr. Gotti makes a promise, he keeps it. And when he decides someone needs to be dealt with, they get dealt with." The next morning, Elise sat with her mother in the medical suite. Catherine was awake now, confused but calm. The pain medication was better here. The room was quiet, warm, filled with flowers someone had brought in. Where are we? Catherine whispered. Somewhere safe, Mom. Did you win the lottery? Elise almost laughed. Something like that. Her mother squeezed her hand, carefully, avoiding the cast. You're a good daughter, Elise. I'm sorry you had to go through so much for me. Don't be sorry. Just rest. But even as she said it, Elise's mind was somewhere else. She was thinking about John Gotti, about the way his expression had changed when he saw her wrist, about the promise he'd made. The West Side Crew is going to cease to exist. What did that mean? She found out 2 days later. Thomas knocked on her door at 6 a.m. Mr. Gotti wants to see you. Now. She followed him to the study, a massive room lined with bookshelves, leather chairs, and a desk that looked like it weighed 1,000 pounds. John Gotti stood by the window, dressed in a black suit, looking every inch the crime lord the newspapers wrote about. It's done, he said without turning around. Elise's stomach twisted. What's done? Victor Crane is gone. His operation is gone. The men who hurt you are gone. Gone. Now he turned and his eyes were cold. You don't need the details. You just need to know they'll never bother you again. Your debt is erased. The West Side Crew doesn't exist anymore. Elise felt the room spin. You killed them. I removed the problem. That's not. She stopped herself. What could she say? That it was wrong? That he shouldn't have done it? She'd been the one who told him everything. She'd known what he was. She'd just been too desperate to care. You're upset, Gotti said. I don't know what I am. You're free. That's what you are. He walked closer, and his voice softened, just slightly. You saved my life, Elise. I don't forget things like that. And I don't let people who help me get hurt. Not by men like Victor Crane. I didn't ask you to kill anyone. You didn't have to. They stood there in silence. Outside, the sun was rising over the estate, painting the gardens gold. It should have been beautiful. But all Elise could think about was violence, blood, and the fact that she was part of it now, whether she wanted to be or not. What happens to me now? She asked quietly. You finish your job. I still need a nurse for another week. After that, you take your $50,000 and you leave. You go back to your life. You take care of your mother. You forget you ever met me. And if I can't forget? John Gotti smiled, sad, tired, and older than his years. Then you'll understand why I live the way I do. But Elise didn't leave after 1 week. Because 3 days later, someone tried to kill John Gotti again. And this time, the threat came from inside his own organization. It happened at midnight. Elise was checking Gotti's vitals, a routine she'd done 100 times. When the lights went out, not just in the room, the entire estate went dark. John Gotti was on his feet instantly, ignoring the pain in his abdomen. Get down. What? Get down. She dropped to the floor just as the door exploded inward. 2 men in black tactical gear stormed in, rifles raised. But Thomas was faster. He appeared from the hallway, gun already drawn, and fired 3 times. Both attackers went down. Sir, we need to move, Thomas shouted. Now. How many? At least 6. Maybe more. They cut the power and the security system. Gotti grabbed Elise by the arm, pulling her toward a bookshelf on the far wall. He pressed something hidden in the wood, and the entire shelf swung open, revealing a narrow staircase. Go, he ordered. What about my mother? Thomas will get her. Move. They descended 3 flights in darkness, Gotti's hand gripping her shoulder to keep her steady. Behind them, she could hear gunfire, sharp, echoing, terrifying. The staircase ended in a tunnel. Concrete walls. Emergency lights glowing red every 10 feet. Gotti led her through it, moving fast despite his injury. Who's attacking us? Elise gasped. Someone who thinks I'm weak. They emerged in a garage beneath the estate. 3 cars sat waiting, engines already running. 2 of Gotti's men stood guard, weapons ready. Where's Thomas? Gotti demanded, getting the woman from the medical wing. One of the guards said, he'll meet us at the safe house. Good. Let's go. They piled into the middle car, A black SUV with bulletproof windows and armor plating. The driver didn't wait for instructions. They were moving before the doors even closed. Elise sat in the back seat, heart hammering, trying to process what had just happened. Someone had attacked John Gotti in his own home. Someone with inside information. Someone who knew where he was when he was vulnerable, how to bypass his security. Who was it? She asked. Gotti stared out the window, jaw tight. I have suspicions. Are we safe? For now. The safe house was an apartment building in downtown Manhattan. Nondescript, ordinary, the kind of place no one would look twice at. But the top floor was reinforced like a bunker. Guards at every entrance. Cameras everywhere. Steel doors. Panic rooms. Thomas arrived 20 minutes later with Catherine, 2 nurses, and enough medical equipment to run a small hospital. She's fine, Thomas assured Elise. Sedated, but fine. We'll set her up in the east bedroom. Thank you. Thomas nodded, then turned to Gotti. We have a problem. Tell me. I know who gave them access. The room went silent. Gotti's expression didn't change, but the air around him seemed to darken. Who? Daniel Prieto. Elise saw Gotti's hands clench into fists. You're certain? He's the only one who had the override codes for the security system, and he's been meeting with Angelo Russo for the past 2 weeks. Russo? The name came out like poison. Thomas nodded. He's making a move. He thinks you're weak after the shooting. He's paying off your lieutenants, trying to fracture the organization from the inside. Prieto was the first to flip. Won't be the last. John Gotti stood there for a long moment, perfectly still. Then he walked to the window and looked out at the city, a city he'd ruled for 15 years, a city that was now trying to devour him. Fine, Prieto, he said quietly. Bring him to me? Alive. Yes, sir. And Thomas. Sir, find out who else has been talking to Russo. I want names. I want locations. I want everything. Thomas left. Elise approached carefully. Who's Angelo Russo? Someone who used to work for me. Someone who got greedy. Gotti turned to face her. This is the part where you realize what you've gotten involved in. I already know what you are. Do you? His voice was soft, dangerous. Because right now, there are 12 men out there who want me dead. And they'll kill anyone standing next to me to make it happen. That includes you. That includes your mother. Elise felt the fear rise in her throat. Then let us go. We'll disappear. You don't owe us anything. It's too late for that. Why? Because Russo knows you saved my life. He knows I moved your mother. He knows I went after the West Side crew for you. Gotti stepped closer. In his eyes, your leverage. And if he gets his hands on you, he'll use you to draw me out. So, what do? We end this. Fast. Over the next 48 hours, Elise watched John Gotti transform into something else entirely. He made calls. He moved pieces on a board she couldn't see. He sent men out into the city, quiet, efficient, lethal. And one by one, the people who had betrayed him started disappearing. Daniel Prieto was found in a warehouse on the waterfront, tied to a chair, begging for mercy. Gotti spent 3 hours with him. Elise never asked what happened in that room. She didn't want to know. But when Gotti emerged, he had a list of names. 7 men, 7 betrayals. By the end of the week, all 7 were gone. Elise tried to focus on her mother. Catherine was stable now, responding well to the new treatments. The oncologist Gotti had hired was optimistic, guarded, but optimistic. But Elise couldn't stop thinking about the bodies, the violence, the cold, calculated way John Gotti dismantled Angelo Russo's operation piece by piece. You're scared of me now, Gotti said one night. They were sitting in the safe house living room. It was 3 a.m. Neither of them could sleep. I don't know what I am, Elise admitted. You're angry. You think I'm a monster. Aren't you? He smiled, tired, sad. Yes, but I'm the monster who's keeping you alive. Is that supposed to make me feel better? No, it's supposed to make you understand how this world works. He leaned forward. You lived a good life, Elise. You helped people. You followed the rules. And where did it get you? Beaten, broken, drowning in debt while your mother died and no one gave a damn. That doesn't justify. I'm not asking for justification. I'm telling you the truth. The world you believed in, it doesn't exist. Not for people like us. We survive because we make hard choices. We do what has to be done. Elise wanted to argue. She wanted to tell him he was wrong, that there was another way, that violence only created more violence. But she thought about Victor Crane, about the men who broke her wrist, about the system that let her mother suffer while insurance companies counted their profits. And she couldn't find the words. What happens when this is over? She asked instead. Russo dies. His organization collapses. And I go back to running mine. And me? Gotti looked at her for a long moment. You leave. You take care of your mother. You try to forget. What if I don't want to forget? The question hung in the air between them. John Gotti stood up, walked to the window, and stared out at the city lights. Then you'll have to decide what kind of person you want to be, he said quietly. Because once you cross certain lines, you can't go back. And I won't be responsible for destroying whatever goodness is left in you. Before Elise could respond, Thomas burst into the room. Sir, we found Russo. Gotti's expression went cold. Where? The docks. Warehouse 17. He's there right now with 8 men. How do you know? Because he wants you to come. He sent a message. Thomas hesitated. He is a hostage. Elise's blood turned to ice. Who? Gotti demanded. Thomas looked at Elise. Your brother. Elise felt the world tilt. I don't have a brother. Thomas pulled out his phone, showed her a photo. A young man, maybe 25, tied to a chair, beaten, terrified. Tyler Morrison, Thomas said, half-brother. Same father, different mother. He contacted Victor Crane's operation 3 months ago, trying to borrow money for law school. When the West Side crew collapsed, Russo picked up the debt. He's been looking for leverage ever since. Elise stared at the photo. She hadn't seen Tyler in 5 years, not since her father's funeral. They'd never been close. Different lives, different worlds, but he was still family. This is a trap, Gotti said flatly. Obviously, Thomas replied. Russo knows you'll come. He's counting on it. Then we don't go. Elise spun toward him. What? It's a trap, Elise. If I walk into that warehouse, I'm dead. He'll have snipers, explosives, everything. Russo isn't stupid. So you're just going to let him kill Tyler? Your brother made his own choices. He borrowed money from criminals. That's on him. He's 25 years old. And I'm not responsible for saving every idiot who gets in over their head. The words hit like a slap. Elise stepped back, anger flooding through her. You saved me. That was different. How? How was it different? Gotti's jaw tightened. Because you were innocent. You borrowed money to save your mother. Your brother borrowed money to pay for law school. Those aren't the same thing. So he deserves to die? I didn't say that. Then what are you saying? For a moment, John Gotti didn't answer. He just stood there, the weight of 1,000 decisions pressing down on him. Then he turned to Thomas. How many men does Russo have at the warehouse? 8 confirmed, probably more hidden. And we have 12. Maybe 15 if we call in the Brooklyn crew. Gotti nodded slowly. Get everyone. I want full tactical gear, body armor, everything. We go in heavy, we go in fast. And we don't leave until Russo is dead. Sir, I'm not debating this, Thomas. You're risking everything for a kid you don't even know. No. Gotti looked at Elise. I'm keeping a promise. They left at dawn. For SUVs, 15 men. Enough firepower to start a war. Elise rode in the lead vehicle with Gotti and Thomas. Her mother was safe, locked down in the safe house with 2 guards and strict orders not to open the door for anyone. You're not coming inside, Gotti told Elise as they drove. The hell I'm not. This is going to get bloody. You don't need to see that. He's my brother. And you're a nurse, not a soldier. You stay in the car. I save your life. Don't tell me what I can handle. Gotti almost smiled. You're stubborn. I learned from the best. The docks were quiet. Too quiet. Warehouse 17 sat at the end of a long pier, surrounded by shipping containers and rusted cranes. The morning fog rolled in off the water, thick and gray. This is wrong, Thomas muttered. It feels wrong. Everything about this feels wrong, Gotti agreed. But we're here now. They parked 100 yards out. Gotti's men spread out, taking positions behind cover. 2 snipers climbed up onto nearby buildings. Everyone checked their weapons. Gotti pulled out his phone, dialed a number. Russo, I'm here. Let the kid go. A voice crackled through the speaker. Smooth, confident, amused. John Gotti, the Great Reaper. I was starting to think you'd lost your nerve. Let him go. Come inside. Let's talk. I'm not stupid. Neither am I. But if you want the boy to live, you'll come inside. Alone. Unarmed. You have 5 minutes. The line went dead. Thomas grabbed Gotti's arm. Don't do this. It's suicide. He's right. Elise said, there has to be another way. Gotti looked at her, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw something that looked like fear. There's always another way, he said quietly. But most of them involve people dying, and I'm tired of watching people die because of me. He handed his gun to Thomas, pulled off his jacket, and started walking toward the warehouse. John, Thomas shouted, but Gotti didn't stop. Elise watched him disappear into fog, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might explode. 30 seconds later, gunfire erupted. The warehouse exploded into chaos. Gotti's men moved fast, pouring in through side doors and broken windows. The sound of automatic weapons was deafening. Elise stayed behind the SUV, hands pressed over her ears, praying. Thomas was shouting into a radio. East side clear. West side. Contact 3 hostiles neutralized. Where's Gotti? Center floor. He's pinned down. Get him out of there. More gunfire. More screaming. Elise couldn't take it anymore. She grabbed a first aid kit from the back of the SUV and ran toward the warehouse. Elise, no. Thomas yelled, but she was already inside. The warehouse was a nightmare. Smoke, blood, bodies, men fighting hand to hand in the shadows. She ducked behind a shipping container, trying to orient herself. Then she saw him. John Gotti was on his knees in the center of the floor, hands behind his head. Angelo Russo stood over him, gun pressed to the back of his skull. I win, Russo said. But he was wrong, because Thomas had circled around through the smoke, and when Russo glanced away for just 1 second, Thomas fired. The bullet hit Russo in the shoulder. He spun, firing wildly, and Thomas went down. Gotti moved like lightning. He grabbed Russo's wrist, twisted, and the gun went flying. They crashed to the ground, grappling, punching, 2 apex predators trying to kill each other. Elise ran to Thomas. He was still breathing, but the wound was bad, upper chest, close to the lung. Hang on, she whispered, ripping open the first aid kit. Get Gotti, Thomas gasped. Forget me, get him. Shut up and let me work. She packed a wound, applied pressure, doing everything she could with shaking hands. Around them, the gunfire was dying down. Gotti's men were winning. Russo's crew was collapsing. But Russo himself wasn't done. He pulled a knife from his boot and slashed at Gotti's throat. Gotti jerked back, but the blade caught his shoulder, opening a deep gash. Blood poured down his shirt. They fought like animals, desperate, vicious, beyond reason. And then Gotti got his hands around Russo's throat. He squeezed. Russo thrashed, clawed, kicked, but Gotti didn't let go. His face was expressionless, cold, mechanical. Elise watched Angelo Russo die. Continue. 9:13 a.m. It took 2 minutes. When it was over, Gotti stood up, covered in blood, his own and Russo's. He looked around the warehouse, at the bodies, the destruction, the cost of staying alive in his world. Then he saw Elise. You were supposed to stay in the car. Thomas is hit. He needs a hospital. Gotti nodded. Get him out of here. What about Tyler? Already freed. He's outside. And you? John Gotti looked down at the body of Angelo Russo. I'll be fine. But Elise wasn't sure she believed him. 2 weeks later, the estate was quiet again. The repairs were done. The security system had been upgraded. New guards patrolled the grounds. John Gotti's world had returned to its carefully controlled equilibrium. But something had changed. Elise stood in her mother's room, watching Catherine sleep. The treatments were working. The color was returning to her face. The doctors were using words like remission and hopeful. It was everything Elise had fought for. So why did she feel so empty? She's doing well. Elise turned. John Gotti stood in the doorway, dressed in a simple black shirt and slacks. The wound on his shoulder was healing. The exhaustion in his eyes hadn't. Thanks to you, Elise said. Thanks to medicine. I just paid for it. They stood there in comfortable silence. Tyler left this morning. Gotti said, I put him on a plane to California. Set him up with a new identity. Clean slate. He won't borrow money from criminals again. You didn't have to do that. I wanted to. Why? Gotti smiled, sad, tired. Because you asked me to. Elise felt something twist in her chest. Over the past month, she'd seen this man at his worst and his best. She'd seen him brutal, cold, terrifying. But she'd also seen him protective, honorable, and strangely gentle with the people he cared about. And somewhere along the way, she'd stopped being afraid of him. Your contract is up tomorrow, Gotti said. $50,000. Clean break. You can take your mother and go anywhere you want. And if I don't want to go? He looked at her sharply. Elise, I'm serious. You don't belong in this world. Maybe not, but I don't belong in the old world anymore either. She stepped closer. I was drowning before I met you, working myself to death for a system that didn't care if I lived or died. At least here, I know where I stand. You think you know, but you don't. This life, he gestured around this state. It's isolation. It's violence. It's watching everyone you care about become a target. I'm already a target. Russo made sure of that. Russo is dead. And someone else will take his place. Someone always does. Elise held his gaze. You told me I'd have to decide what kind of person I want to be. Well, I'm deciding. I want to stay. As what? My nurse. As whatever you need. John Gotti stared at her for a long moment. Then he shook his head. You're going to regret this. Probably. You're going to see things you can't unsee. I already have. You'll lose pieces of yourself. Maybe, Elise smiled, or maybe I'll find pieces I didn't know I had. Gotti almost laughed. You're impossible. I learned from the best. He reached out, touched her cast gently. How's the wrist? Healing. Dr. Foster says I'll have full mobility in 6 weeks. Good. They stood there, close enough to touch, two broken people who'd found something like safety in each other. I'll make you a deal, Gotti said finally. You stay. You help me run this place. You keep me alive. But the moment you want out, the moment it gets to be too much, you tell me, and I'll let you go. No questions asked. Deal. I mean it, Elise. I won't trap you here. I know. He studied her face, searching for doubt, for fear, for any sign that she didn't understand what she was agreeing to. But all he saw was determination. All right then, he said quietly. Welcome to the family. 6 months later, Elise Harper stood on the balcony of John Gotti's estate, watching the sun set over the city. Her mother was downstairs, laughing with Thomas about something that had happened at physical therapy. The doctors had declared her cancer-free 3 months ago. It was a miracle, or as close to one as this world allowed. Behind her, the door opened. You're thinking too much, Gotti said, handing her a glass of wine. Just reflecting. On what? On how different everything is. He leaned against the railing beside her. Regrets? No. Liar. Elise smiled. Okay, maybe a few, but not about staying. What then? About the person I used to be. Before all this. She took a sip of wine. I was so sure I was good. that I was helping people, that I was making the world better. You were? Was I? Or was I just pretending the darkness didn't exist? Letting men like Victor Crane and Angelo Russo hurt people while I hid behind my scrubs and my self-righteousness. Gotti didn't answer right away. He just watched his city glow in the fading light. You want to know the truth? He said finally. Good and evil aren't opposites. They're neighbors, and the line between them is so thin you can cross it without even knowing. That's terrifying. Yes, but it's also freeing, because once you accept that you're capable of both, you stop judging yourself so harshly. You just try to do the best you can with the choices you're given. Elise thought about that, about broken wrists and hospital bills, about loans and threats, about the moment she'd watched John Gotti kill Angelo Russo, and felt relief instead of horror. I'm not the same person I was 6 months ago, she said softly. No, you're stronger, or more broken. Sometimes those are the same thing. They stood there in silence, watching the city breathe. After a while, Gotti spoke again. I got a call today from a senator who owes me a favor. He's pushing through legislation, reform for medical debt. It won't fix everything, but it's a start. Fewer people like you, drowning because they tried to save someone they loved. Elise turned to him, eyes wide. You did that. I made a phone call. The senator did the work. John, don't read too much into it. I'm still the same person I've always been. But Elise knew better. She'd seen the way he looked at her mother, the way he protected Tyler, the way he dismantled the West Side crew, not just for revenge, but for justice. John Gotti was a monster, but he was her monster, and in a world that had tried to destroy them both. That was enough. 3 years later, the estate had changed. It was still a fortress, still filled with guards and security systems and men who killed for a living, but it was also a home. Catherine Harper lived in the West Wing, healthy and happy, spending her days painting in the garden. Tyler visited twice a year, grateful and cautious, rebuilding a relationship with the sister who'd saved him. And Elise had found her place. She ran the medical operations for Gotti's organization, not just for him, but for everyone. The soldiers who got hurt on jobs, the families who needed help but couldn't afford hospitals, the people who fell through the cracks of a system that didn't care. She becomes something she never expected, a bridge between two worlds. Still a healer, but no longer naive about what healing required. John Gotti was different too. Older, quieter, more careful with who he trusted and how he spent his power. They'd become partners, professional, personal, something deeper than words could define. He trusted her with his life. She trusted him with her soul. And on nights when the weight got too heavy, when the violence felt like too much, they'd stand on that balcony together and remind each other why they stayed. Because some people didn't get to be heroes. Some people just survived. And if they were lucky, they found someone to survive with. One morning, 5 years after that first night, Elise woke to sunlight streaming through the bedroom windows. Beside her, John stirred, pulling her closer in his sleep. She smiled. Her wrist, the one Victor Crane's men had broken, ached sometimes when it rained. A permanent reminder of the night that changed everything. But she didn't regret it. Not the pain, not the choices, not the life she'd built in the aftermath. Because the truth was simple. Sometimes the world broke you. And sometimes in the breaking, you found the person who'd help you rebuild. Not into who you were before, but into who you needed to become. Elise Harper had come to this estate as a desperate woman with a broken wrist and a dying mother. She'd stayed as a partner to a Mafia boss. And she'd found peace, not in the absence of darkness, but in the decision to face it with someone who understood. That morning, as she lay in bed listening to John breathe, Elise thought about all the lives she'd saved, all the families she'd helped, all the people who survived because she'd chosen to stay in this world instead of running from it. And she knew with absolute certainty that she'd made the right choice. Not the safe choice, not the easy choice, but the right one. For her mother, for everyone who needed someone to stand between them and the darkness. John Gotti had noticed her broken wrist, and by morning, he'd changed everything, not just for her, but for everyone she'd ever loved. That was the truth. That was the story, and it was enough.